If there's one thing about me that's been true for a while, I like I like seeing music. Anybody that knows me quite well knows that I'm always into metal kind of music. When it comes to bands like I'm an old school fan. I like the first band I ever digged was Twisted Sister, a long time ago. As a kid, I remember buying the cassette tape of Stay Hungry, and bought the vinyl record when it was actually popular, Stay Hungry. And I started listening to other types of music since then. Not just Twisted Sister. I would listen to Motley Crue. I would listen to Poison. I would listen to other bands of that nature, and then I would elevate myself into something a little bit different. I think I was also listening to at that time Metallica. Uh, I was listening to the Black Album when it first came out. Even though Metallica's been out for a long, long time, the Black Album was where I actually started hearing about them. I've heard of Metallica from my cousins and other friends, and then I started listening to them. I started listening to Slayer. Started listening to Megadeth. There's a lot of badass bands that I was into a long time ago. The whole speed metal, thrash metal deal, and then I started listening to death metal from Deicide to Cannibal Corpse to Carcass and others of that nature. Nowadays, metal is has kind of changed and evolved over the years. In the '90s, we had the alternative, when with Nirvana and Soundgarden in that particular point of era, and then I believe in many ways it kind of died down in 1993, 1994, when Kurt Cobain had shot himself and he passed away, and that kind of killed the grunge scene, and metal started rising up again with bands like Slayer and Pantera, especially Pantera. They started coming up. When I started hearing Cowboys from Hell, and I started hearing Vulgar Display of Power, and the Far Beyond Driven CDs. I mean, those were some badass music back then. And the music now you hear bands like Five Finger Death Punch, uh, All That Remains, Kill Switch Engage, and Shadows Fall. There's like all these badass bands that you hear either on the radio or on TV or anything of that nature. Here in Corpus, there's a lot of these great bands that no one's ever heard of before. Um, when I was into the local scene, there was a band called Abrasion that really took everything. They came from Carroll High School. They were the hottest band that has ever come around in a long, long time. And there were others like I think Syntegrity was another. There were a few other bands that I remember in that point in the era. And then there was a band called Free State, and this was the first stage of Free State when it was. I remember Hector being in Abrasion with Renee, with Saul, and with Jesse. And then that kind of disbanded in 2000, and then in comes Free State. Free State would show up with it was Hector, it was Renee, it was Saul, it was Matt, it was Gabriel. That was the first part of Free State. Then the second coming of Free State, it would be Matt would be out of the band, and Gabriel would be out of the band. It would just be Renee, Saul, Hector. That was it. I was into that point of Free State. That was the as I call it, the Equalize era, when not just Free State, but there were bands like Feedback and the Wet Bandits, 3 for 5, Downfall on the Rise, Protocol 13. There were a lot of badass bands in that era, 2002, 2003. One of the bands I remember quite well was Drifted. They were so awesome to hear and everything. And then the Free State thing had kind of, evolved into something different. It was huge back then. But now, it started changing. And I think I remember, let's see, there was Victima. There was Victima also. I remember that one. Free State kind of died down and then started forming. I remember Hector was in a band called Screwface. That was like, sort of, on and off and everything, and that didn't last too long. And then there was Day Never Came. and it had members of Free State with members of Feedback and 3 for 5 kind of combined together. And that band was also pretty good too. And why that band didn't evolve into anything, I'll never know. And then comes the beginnings of the Periwinkle Massacre. And I was part of that era of the Periwinkle Massacre when it was Hector, when he was guitar player, and Matt, he was a guitar player. The singer was Tim. Frank, who had played with Feedback, and I think he played for 3 for 5 also. He played in Periwinkle Massacre as well. Tommy Martinez, he was also drummer for the band as well. And then there was a lot of lineup changes that happened with Periwinkle Massacre. Tommy would be out, John Luna would be in, Frank would be gone, Jaime would be in, and then out comes Jaime, in comes Mike Rod. And then Hector would take over Tim's spot and be the singer, and then Joe, who had played with Excrete, now had played in Periwinkle Massacre as a guitar player. And then they missed the final ingredient. There was one piece that needed to become what Periwinkle Massacre would be, and that would be Mondo, who is also known as Shy One. And that whole Periwinkle Massacre era, that part, it was really the culmination of something special coming. Periwinkle Massacre at that time would be all that and everything. And the sad thing is there was a lot of great talent. There was a lot of great talent in there. John Luna, I marked him as the best drummer on the planet. He was right up there with Rene Hernandez. And Hector, pound for pound, people will agree or disagree when I say that he's possibly the hardest working entertainer, the best artist that Corpus Christi has ever seen. And that particular point, Periwinkle was hot. And then you had other bands that were starting to come up, and other bands that you've already heard of. Killamora. Killamora, to me, in many ways possible, the Slayer of Corpus Christi. And the reason why I call them that is because Slayer's music has always been intense, brutal, and, everything, psychotic, and they have not changed their style. It's similar with Killamora. I mean, their music is hot, it's intense, it's brutal, it's heavy, and, they've never changed their style. They're not going to, Kill a fucking Mora. That's who they are. And then there's, their band, Shattered Sun. Shattered Sun from Alice, Texas. That band, alongside with, Marcos as the singer. They've been out for a long time, and I think they disbanded and then they got back together. I think that's the way I remember it. And, that band, also another hot thing going. I mean, I remember Marcos saying that his band could never live up to what the Periwinkle Massacre could. But he had no idea that his band would be just as hot as the Periwinkle Massacre. They're in that level, side by side. Nobody can change that. Nobody can change that at all. Shattered Sun, badass. And another band that I've been interested in is Memories in a Broken Glass. I've heard about them, through Hector and through other people. And when they released the album of Recode, that was another great album. One of my favorites in there is a song called Neo Earth. And all the songs on there are badass. But Neo Earth was the one that sticked out the most out of all of them. That's the it factor right there. Nowadays, the bands that you hear now here in Corpus, all are influenced from what happened a long time ago. From the Slayers, to the Megadeths, to the Metallicas, to the Periwinkle, to the Cannibal Corpses, to the Deicide, and all in that nature. And the bands you hear now, like the Periwinkle Massacre, like Shattered Sun, like Killamora, like Memories in a Broken Glass, like This Dying Dream. There are so many other bands that are out there in Corpus that are hot right now. Some that are barely making it, and others that are reaching to the point that they need to be at. And believe me, whether anybody likes it or not, Corpus has got a lot of talented groups, have got a lot of talented musicians, and some have come to me saying, you know what, Furman, you need to mention this band, and Furman, you need to mention that band, and this band, and blah, 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 because they're the hottest thing going, and you got to hear them. And you know what? And I'll be honest, I would take the time and hear them and see what they have to offer. I'm not a manager. I'm not someone that's going to get you somewhere, but I am someone that's going to say, hey, I'm going to spread the word out. This band right here is the hottest thing going in Corpus Christi. You could check them out at Theo's, or check them out at the House of Rock, or check them out at Zeros. There's a lot of great talent out there. And whether anybody likes it or not, whether it's here in Corpus or in San Antonio or in Houston or in Austin, or whether it's over in California or whether it's over in New York, whether it's anywhere across the world, if you've never heard any local band at all, take the time to listen to them and see what they have to offer. If they sound exactly like what this band is, then that's cool, you know? But if they have something that you've never heard of before, that's intense, that's brutal, that's just right, spread it all around. The thing that we all need to do, all of us, is support our local music. Because you never know when there's that one band that could hit and say they're from Corpus Christi or say they're from Alice and become the biggest thing in all of music. Believe me, you'll see that happen very soon.